coming in. Who's in the building? We can see Vets in the building. University of Vets and Northwest University. Tabo Kumalo from NWU. We can see you. We can see you. Welcome, Tabo. Welcome, welcome. Tell us which university you're coming from so that we can welcome you properly as we get settled in here. Welcome, Floyd from Vets. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's see who's there. Who's there? Welcome from Vets University. We've got a lot of Vets University in the house. We've got Stellenbosch, we've got UJ, we've got TUT, Shelley from TUT, welcome. We've got UP, Universiteit van Pretoria is in the house. University of Pretoria in the house, UKZN in the house, University of Limpopo in the house, UJ in Namibia is in the house, Lisiba from Vets is in the house, University of Mpumalanga always pitches in. They are here as well. Welcome. University of Mpumalanga, welcome. UCT Sociology, welcome. Good to see you. UCT and Stellis are here. NWU, my University of Northwest is here. A lot of people from UNISA, we can see you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Wonderful to have you here. UDSM, I don't know what is UDSM. Remind me what's UDSM. I know that Strauss has been here from Cyprus. Strauss will be joining also from Cyprus. We had someone from McMaster University in Canada, University of Limpopo in the house, Central University of Technology in Bloemfontein. Welcome, CUT, CPUT, everyone, welcome. It's 1 minute past 4, and I'd like us to start soon. I just want to make sure that everyone is in the house. University of Dar es Salaam. Tanzania is in the house. University of Dar es Salaam, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Let me see. People from Cyprus are here. Strauss, I'm waiting for you. I'm waiting for you. We're going to be starting just now. DUT in the house. CUT in the house. Welcome. SMU in the house. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Vets University. It's good to see you here. It's good to see you here today. We are talking about a very important topic, right? University of Venda. Good to see you as well. Good to see you. And Professor Masume from UCT, I can see you. I can see you, Amandla Ness. Welcome. UJ, NWU, welcome, welcome. Let's see. We've got, thank you, Lisiba. Welcome. It's great. I'm just waiting for one of the rooms to have 100 people. Then we won't have an echo. One of the rooms must have 100 people. Tell your supervisors we are here. Tax! Yes, I can see one of the rooms is 100 people. So we have about 300 people in the session right now. So I think we're ready to start. Welcome. Today, we're talking about getting your academic publications right, journal publications right. Last week, we talked a lot about predatory journals, how to avoid them, how to notice them. And of course, we had Lucia Skumbi on the line. Lucia is very knowledgeable, very helpful. She works for a publishing house that publishes journals internationally. And it's always good to talk to someone who's here in South Africa and works with all of these issues, understands the struggles of students and academics publishing, and he can let us in on really what's happening inside the world of publishing. Today, we want to focus on your publication strategy. It is important that you don't, Puselezo, we can see you from Harvard. Puselezo says, Le Harvard eating. Harvard in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not only the University in Cyprus and McMaster University outside South Africa, also Harvard is here. We are within Pakati Inside. Pakati Inside, we are within. So we are talking about your publication strategy. It's important that you have your publication strategy and you don't just publish haphazardly. Because if you just publish haphazardly without thinking, that's where you end up going into the wrong journals. So we want you to think carefully about when do you publish? When is your research ready for publication? So that you don't just publish before you are ready for publication, all right? And what kinds of goals or targets can you set up for yourself, right? And then schedule your publications. How do you schedule your publications? What do you consider when you schedule your publications, right? It's important that you think about it. Many of you might still be doing your PhDs, or you might be a young academic, you've started a new project after your PhD. It's important that you're clear about how you get into this. And then once you're clear about when to publish, we've got to talk about how do you publish. The different publishing models, like there's open access. We talked about open access publishing last week. There's also preprint archives and repositories that you can put your work in. I can see you in Kenya. Welcome. Welcome, CPA Sinteria from Narok, Kenya. Welcome. We are global, ladies and gentlemen. When we talk about how to publish, you need to think, do you publish in open access? Do you want to consider preprint archives and repositories to put your work in there? Do you want to consider other alternative avenues to publish your work? Last week we talked about it is possible that you can publish on your website or on other sites that are not necessarily academic journals. You also have to think about, when you think about how to publish, you have to think about, do you want to co-author? Who do you co-author with? How do you select the people that you co-author with? Or is it strategic to co-author now or later? It's important that you think about those things in your publication strategy. And then you think what to publish. Okay? What to publish is very important. It's important that in your discipline, you're aware of what are the hot topics in your discipline or in your area of study. Are there growing fields? How does your research relate to, for example, to sustainable development goals, because they are current right now. You also want to be up to date, and you also want to be in the know about what is trending and whether you want to get in there or not. Remember, we talked last week about establishing a niche for yourself. So even within your niche, you might want to say, even within this niche, I want to talk a little bit about sustainable development goals, or to hook onto that, or to COVID, the crisis of COVID, or whatever. So you want to be strategic when you think about what to publish. And then the important question of where to publish, all right? Funders might have requirements. Some funders might say you've got to publish in these journals or not. They're giving you money. You can't call them names now when they expect you to deliver on what you agreed on when they give you money. You must be flexible, right? You've got to think also about the type of publisher you want to publish in. Remember that previous weeks we talked to the other professors who said sometimes it's important to, when you belong to an association, check if they have a journal, publish in that journal. At least you are definitely sure that it's legit because it's published by the association, right? And then you have to avoid predatory journals. You want to avoid predatory journals. We talked about them last week. So Lucia might refer to that a little bit again today. We might refer to poor journals because some journals are not predatory, but they're just poor. So it's important that you know what's a poor journal and what's not. Last week, we also referred a little bit to journal metrics. People asked about citation indices. Is that a good way to select your journals or not? We're going to ask Lucia to talk to us a lot about that. And then, finally, we'll talk about optimizing your profile, all right? When you publish, you are sharing your work, all right? But it's also growing your profile, all right? You want to grow your profile as a scholar, all right? You want to be known as a scholar who's an expert in a particular field. And part of getting known as an expert in a particular field is your publication, where you put them, but it's also thinking about the different profiling platforms. I know you may be sitting there and saying, I don't want to be known, blah, blah, blah. As a maid, we all want our work to be known. The more known your work is and the more known you are, the more funding you attract for your research and the more your work can advance. So let's be realistic. You want to grow your profile. So what are you using? Are you using Scopus profile? Are you using social media? You've got to think carefully about. You want to use social media in a way that enhances your scholarship, rather than just think that when you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that, right? So that's what we're talking about today. We also will go back to your questions. We'll answer your questions. And Lucia is on standby to do that. Lucia, I'm going to be calling on Lucia now. Today, we are quite flexible. If you write your questions on the screen, I'll keep questions on Facebook. I can see you there. So if you have questions on Facebook, write them on the comment line. On Twitter, write them. Instagram, do that, and then we, occasionally I'll go to your questions. But we've got questions that we received last week. If you don't want us to mention your names, we won't do that. Lucia, good to see you. Good to see you.
Hi, good to see you too.
I love your outfit. Beautiful, beautiful. We are color coordinated, actually.
Yeah, it looks like it.
Yes, it looks like we circulated a memo. Really, really.
Okay,
good to see you, and thank you so much. Thank you so much. Today I'm having an entire 40 minutes with you, which is.
I'm up for it. I'm up for it.
And I want colleagues on Facebook, please do tell me if you can't hear Lucia. Twitter, tell me if you can't hear Lucia. I want you to hear her. So I'm gonna just move this tripod here so that Twitter is next to you and they can hear you. So Lucia, tell us about the publication strategy. Why is it important? Why
so you gave a very good overview. Thanks for that. That was an excellent start to it. So it's very important to have a publication strategy because it allows you to plan and to prioritize your academic work. And it also allows you to monitor your progress, as you go through the year, to make sure that you're on track, to make sure that you are getting it done. And then it also prepares you for when you have interviews, when you have an assessment situation or anything like that, because they don't always want to see only what you've done, but they also want to see how you engage with the future and what you are planning to do as well. So to have a good plan, a good strategy that you can share, that really makes it very easy then if you are in such a situation.
That's good. So which means if you're planning to apply for promotion, for grants, whatever, it's also good to show that actually you've thought carefully about this.
Yes.
So tell me, when you get a young academic who's still busy with the PhD, how do they decide? I mean, we start with when to publish.
Yes.
What's the right time? Some people are doing their PhDs. The majority of people online are still doing their publications. They're still doing their PhDs.
So there's no specific time to do it, but what is important is to have your research ready. So you must have worked. You must have results that are ready, and your results have to be original results. So when you are at the stage where you have where you understand the literature, you understand your subject area, what has been published in your subject area, you can see where you fit into that subject area, what is your contribution, and are you actually making a contribution through your research? What niche is it that you're filling there? And you have original research results, then you're ready to go, then you can publish. So whether that is in a master's phase and a PhD phase, or after that, if you've got those factors ready, then you can publish.
Okay. So what about people, Lucia, who say, I've just written a proposal, there's interesting things. I don't have findings, but I have some ideas to share. Is it a good thing to share those ideas that are coming up in the proposal? So it's not necessarily findings. I don't have data, I don't have whatever, but I've engaged with these ideas and I think it might be a good idea to put them in some maybe smaller journal.
Yes, you can share those, but you would share those as commentary to a contribution in a journal. So it would be in a different format. It would be a short communication. It would be a commentary or a letter to the editor. So if you have that, you can also share it at a conference, for example. So there are many platforms in which you can share your ideas as well. But in terms of being ready to, publish your results as a full article, then those criteria that I mentioned would be important.
Great. Lucia, I want to try to make sure that I give you more time to speak. So, talk to us about the rest of the stuff for when to publish. So how do I set targets? How do I schedule? What do I consider in that space? The people on Facebook are saying you're a bit faint. So maybe if you speak a little louder.
Okay, I'll try to. I'll also just, sorry, my hand is in the way now, but I'm trying to increase my volume here.
Yeah.
Is it better, or shall I just speak up a little bit?
I think it's better.
Okay.
Let's wait. Yeah, let's go on. They'll tell me again.
Okay, let me shout a bit here. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, some of the things that are very important. So the target setting is important, and it's very difficult to do that. So this is something that you have to think carefully about. But one of the considerations is your career ambition. So if you are aiming to academia, for example, your targets will be to publish in high impact journals. Whereas if you are aiming towards industry or going to be a practitioner, so then you're going to aim more towards more publications. But academia, it's very important right from the start to keep in mind, and you also need to balance that. You know, quality is going to be very important if you're aiming for academia. But as you manage your time, you have to think about quality and quantity there. So that's one of the important considerations.
I think that's very important. I mean, there are people who have written before saying they are not in academia, they're in industry or government, but they want to do something in academia. So I think some of them are thinking maybe they might go into academia. So if you have those kinds of ambitions, it's okay. But it also means that when you think about your publications, as Lucia is saying, then you've got to think about what's needed in academia. So you've got to look at the high impact factor journals, things that will be valued in that space. But if you don't have any ambitions for that, then you can look at, it's a different kind of space. You maybe more quantity is better than quality.
Yes, so if you're going to industry, R&D within an industry, for example, it's nice to have a long list of publications to show that you have done, you know, research. But academia is going to look at, especially to the higher echelons, when you're going to professor and so on, they want to see quality. So that is what you're going to be evaluated on. So keep that in your mind right from the start, so that you start to know the good quality journals, you know, and so on. So that's important. The other thing is, this depends a lot on the subject area that you're in. So if you are social sciences, arts and humanities, you definitely, if you're aiming for academia, you want to write a book. So you want to publish a book. So that's going to be one of the considerations.
I'm going to be I plan to talk to people about book publications, because I think that's a specific kind of thing. So we have a session on that. But
it would be great to go into the detail of that. But yes, so a book would be one of the targets if you're in that subject areas.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, if you mention it, that's fine. When I talk to Professor Magidimisha, I want to focus more on how they can build, like how do you develop a book proposal? If it's an edited volume, how do you do that? But I see that Mondesoni is asking, what is a high impact factor journal?
Right. So can we come back to that? Because when we talk about in a little while a way to publish, I'm going to talk about that in more depth. Right. So how do I identify a high impact journal? So I'll come to that. Thanks for that question. Right.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at your target, at your schedule of publications, you want to look at articles where you're the lead author, also articles where you're the co-author, and then also look at proceedings. So think about what are the conferences that are coming up, what contributions can you make at that conferences, also where you are the lead and where you are the co-author, because it's a different volume of work that you're going to, you know, be engaging with. So you can schedule all of them and make sure. But that is going to depend on your subject area and your level of experience and so on. But try to think of the different types of manuscripts that you would like to that you would like to, you know, that you would like to publish, and make sure that you schedule them in that order by the type of manuscript that you have in mind, chapter in the book as well, and make sure that you have time for each of them. And then importantly here is to be aware of the duration. So publishing in a journal, academic journal, unfortunately that does take a lot of time, and you need to have different deadlines. So you need to have deadlines for when must I complete my manuscript, and then leave time for the publication process. And in that time, you're starting on your next project, so your next publication project already.
So basically, your strategy has to have, timeline. So you might start one paper in January. You must give time for it to be, for the review process. You can't just wait and say, I'll start the next one when that one comes out. It might be a good idea that 2 months later you start another paper, you submit another paper. So you have to be careful of that, because it can take a long time to get it. If it's a good journal, it might take a long time. They might be getting a lot of manuscripts.
So a question that we very often get is how long? What is a reasonable time? And in academic journals, usually, so the averages are between 4 and 6 weeks, you're going to get your rejection. If it's a full out rejection, you'll know without 4 to 6 weeks. If it's not a rejection, you will hear on average by 4 months, you will know that it's gone for peer review. And then the peer review process takes a couple of months as well. So in total, we talk a short between 6 months, 9 months, and up to a year as well. Yeah. But I would say an average is between 6 and 9 months. And that's then, it's gone for peer review, it's come back, you've done your corrections, and finally it is accepted and it's published. You can work on about 6 to 9 months.
That's very important. Many young academics and postgraduate students complain when they don't get a response from, they don't get their paper accepted within 6 months. And they write to me, Prof, it's unfair, it's taking forever. But actually, when a journal, especially good journals, they get too many, and 6 months, 6 to 9 months is actually a reasonable time. And that's why you don't just do one, you want to do a few to different journals. So be patient when you have your publication, when you have submitted. You said something about thinking about who to publish with. You said it's also important to think about which paper you are going to do with who, when, and so on. So you don't only think about the paper. So when you do your strategy, you've got to write the people that you want to write with.
Yes, so your co-authors are important. In certain situations, it's very important to have an international co-author if it is possible. If you're at that level of your research, try to build a network as international as possible. That's not only going to help you to get published, it's going to help you get funding as well, and it's going to increase the visibility of your research. It's going to increase the impact of your research. The readership becomes improved, the citations become improved. So as soon as it's possible for you, trying to build up international networks so that you can co-author internationally.
And there's someone who says, is it not unethical to submit one manuscript to more than one journal at the same time? I think it's unethical. What do you think?
Yes, definitely. So that's why it's so important. You have to do a lot of homework when you select your journal, because when you do submit it, you can't submit it elsewhere. And as I mentioned now, it takes a very long time. So by the time that you get feedback, then you have to start the process again. So it's good to do that research that you know that you're publishing in the right, or you're submitting to the right journal.
If you submit your paper to journal A, you can't take the same paper to journal B. That's like double crossing people, because what if they both accept? it is unethical. So you wait for Journal A to give you the outcome. It may be taking longer, but it's worth the wait because you know that you get the, so submit to one and then write another paper to submit to another journal. That's okay. Even if it's from the same research project, you can write 2 different papers, one to one journal, one to the other.
So it's also important to prepare yourself emotionally, because once you've finished your manuscript and you've submitted, then you can be quite emotionally exhausted. But if you have planned, you've got your targets, then you really understand that now I have to start working immediately while I'm waiting, to use your waiting time to start working on your next manuscript. So that also helps you to have the mental and emotional energy that you need. Right.
Yeah. So pace yourself, right?
Pace yourself. Yes.
Pace yourself, and don't think simply because you submitted you won't get any feedback back. And it's interesting, Lucia. Yesterday I was having an online meeting with my collaborators, and they're very senior. And this senior professor, we're talking about a book, edited book, and she says, I submitted, a special issue of a journal that's published in Europe. And he said, I submitted my paper to this journal. It's a special issue. They gave me feedback, very little. She's complaining. She says, it's very little. I don't think they read my paper properly. She says, the comments are not, I want proper, and it's, when you are experienced, you can see when people didn't do a thorough job of your, it's not that you doubt your work, you want feedback, but it's interesting when people are not experienced, they want little comment, don't tell me to change. It's the people who are not so experienced, who don't want to change anything, who don't want feedback at all. They want people to just say, it's right, we are publishing. And if you ever get that, red lights, red lights. If you submit a paper and they just say accepted, red lights, you must know something is wrong if they don't give you feedback.
Absolutely. So peer reviewers can really enhance your paper a lot, and you can learn a lot from them. So this is extremely valuable, that feedback. So you should actually treasure it if you get good feedback. Right.
Yeah. And sometimes it can lead to another paper. I've seen sometimes you get feedback and it gives you an idea for another paper from the same work. So you shouldn't resent feedback at all.
Yeah. So your targets, your scheduling is also important, because you don't want gaps in your publications, right? So if on a CV, it's always a bit of a question, why is there a gap? So it's a try to be consistent and try to schedule it, and you're not going to get it right if you don't plan it. So it's important. That's also why it's important to publish, to have this plan ready. I just want to mention, because I said it's important to co-author, it's important not to co-author with too many co-authors. So if your list of co-authors are too many, then it can also not really contribute to your profile. So also keep that in mind when you start off. That's fine, but keep it in mind. Not too many is probably a good thing, right?
So when you say not too many, you mean there should be papers where you have written on your own, and then when you collaborate, when you co-author, make sure that there aren't like 10 people in one paper. Of course, it depends. I mean, if you are working on particle physics, there's big groups and there's 100 people writing a paper, that's a specific thing. But so when you think about your strategy, make sure there's at least in a year, you must have some papers, depending on your level. Make sure that you have some papers that you wrote alone and some that you write with someone. Just make sure that you don't have too many people. That's what Lucia is saying. Maybe 2-3 people, so that you, otherwise, if you write with too many people, all your papers are with too many people, whoever's looking at your CV is not really sure what your contribution was.
Exactly.
People will always ask, what was your contribution? And if you are too many, then you end up having like 10% contribution or nothing. So just be strategic. Some you have 100%, some 50%, some 30%, mix it.
Right. So that's important in terms of consideration of, when to publish. So you have your plan, you have your targets, and then you're ready to go. Yeah. If you need, so most journals also give information about the duration of what is the time, so they have averages, so try to check that as well, so that, because that also informs your planning, that you know, if you have journals in mind, it's going to be 6 months, it's going to be 9 months. So most good journals give that, and they also give their rejection rate. So some journals actually, that is part of their own strategy. So a journal like Nature, for example, they have a limit of 7% acceptance rate.
Wow.
So they only accept, yes, and they never go beyond that. So that's one of the performance indicators, for example. So that's an extreme example. It's one of the top journals in the world. But just also keep in mind that the rejection rate of the journal might be high, and be aware of that.
I see some people are asking questions about how many papers I should, as a young academic, I should publish in a year, in one academic year. You know, nobody can tell you that. It depends on the discipline, it depends on the level. In some disciplines, you know, people publish, you know, here at UCT, we've got people who publish a lot of papers in 1 year, senior professors who publish like 20 in top journals every year, but these are top people. So the big thing that you need to be aware of is not to have a year where you haven't published. Just make sure, if you're a young academic, not a year goes without you publishing at least one sole authored paper, and then you can have if you are young. Look, I'm just saying basic. I'm not saying this is the standard. There are young academics who publish way more, so nobody can tell you how much. What we are trying to tell you is you don't want a break, so you've got to pace. That's why you need a strategy, your publication strategy. That's why you need it, to make sure that you don't have a break and you have a continuous a system where you keep submitting papers. When you submit, and then you get feedback, and you keep working that way.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're in a subject area where the publication rate is slower, like in arts and humanities, in the social sciences, business management, also they don't publish that many. It's often survey based, takes very long, or sometimes the experiments take very long to get results. So that's not something that you have control over. But in cases like that, try to diversify. So have a research article ready, do a commentary, conference paper, contribution to a chapter. There you can be more diversified. But usually arts and humanities, social sciences, business, mathematics, also much fewer publications than biomedical sciences, where they can easily publish 20, 25 papers a year.
Very true, very true. Yeah. I see some other question that's an easy one that I can answer. Lucia, I'll give you the difficult ones. When should you start publishing? You know, you can start publishing at any time, as long as you have. The issue is, what do you have to publish? It's got to be clear. You've got to be clear about what to publish. So some people from their honors project, I started, my first publication was from my honors project, you know, and my master's, I went into an international journal after my master's, but it's because I had a good supervisor who gave me advice and didn't scare me of these things. So it may be that from your honors project, you've done good work, that you can put it out, maybe in a conference proceeding, maybe in a journal, local journal, whatever, for your master's. So just see what is there. Some people do master's project and there is nothing to publish in them. Okay, so it depends what you have to publish. There has to be something to share. It's not just publishing for the sake of publishing. I have a master's degree, so they must accept my paper. No. It depends what is in the paper.
Exactly, right. And the next thing would be to think about the publishing models as well. How do you want to publish? Because that has changed a lot over the past 30 years or so. So you have a lot more choices in terms of subscription journals have been the model over the past 100 or so years. So most journals work like that, where the cost for the publishing is paid usually by a subscription fee, which is paid by the library of the university. in most cases. But now you can also select open access. So you can, if you want your paper to be open and freely available immediately, so you can pay an article processing charge, and that then covers the production cost of the article, and it's free immediately. So you have that choice. There's no difference in terms of the quality of an open access journal. It goes through peer review as well. Just very important to check whether it's a subscription journal or whether it's an open access journal. Check the website to make sure that they provide information about the peer review, that it is a peer reviewed journal. So then you have a quality factor in there. So those are the two most not important, but those are the two that are used the most at the moment. Is either subscription, where the author doesn't pay, but it's covered by the subscription cost there.
Okay, cool. Can you be considered for a PhD graduate without publication? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Someone's asking the question. Getting a PhD and publishing are two different things. Universities work differently. Some universities and also disciplines and departments work differently. Some departments will say you cannot graduate with your PhD until you publish at least 2 papers. Some departments do that. It's a policy of that department or that discipline in your university. It doesn't mean it applies everywhere. If I were you, I would consider it a huge advantage. I would take it on and do it. I wouldn't complain, because it actually it's giving you a leg up that by the time you graduate, you already have 2 publications. So it's not for all universities, but many universities, they want you to graduate with a PhD without publication. It's not a requirement.
Yes, it's not a prerequisite at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's also some of the alternative ways of publishing can also be, so this is quite novel now, that you can also publish your methods, you can publish your data, and of course you can publish software. So there are journals that specialize in those now, so look out for them. You will find them on the publisher's website. So you don't need to, it doesn't need to be a traditional journal. There are lots of options.
How do you publish data? So how do you publish data? So you could have done interviews of children in some area, and then you just publish the data.
Yes, you can just publish your data as well. You can, and that you can publish in journals that specialize as data journals now. So data, we all know data is the new gold in the world. So if you have data that is, you know, that other researchers can use, you want to put it out there. So there are ways to put it out there, either by publishing in a journal format, but you can also publish it on a repository. So your raw data goes on into a repository. Mendeley Data is one of them. Most universities now have Figshare, they have a repository, but you can publish your data separately, or you can add it also to your publication. And usually it enhances your publication. So we've got good data to show that when you attach your data or publish your data as well, make it available, then you get more citations. There's more interest in your work. So it could be a good strategy also to enhance the impact of your research.
Yeah. That's good to know. That's good to know.
Right.
You got it. Facebookers are struggling with volume. I hope you got it. You can publish your data, you can publish software, you can publish, you can publish you can have a methodological paper. It doesn't mean that's always analysis and findings. You can publish a section from your thesis that's about methodology. The issue is you've got to say, what is the contribution here? So it's not just about publishing methodology. Wow. There must be a contribution. Someone must read that paper and get some. Is it because you've done something different? Why? What? There has to be a contribution. So even with data, I don't think it's just putting it out there. There has to be something that's special about the data that people will want to go for. So think about carefully. So the issue of what to publish is really important in that way. It's not just that you're taking out something out because you've got a PhD. Think carefully about what you want to get out.
Absolutely. And not all data you can publish. Some data, of course, is very sensitive, or you want to republish from that same data, so you don't want to make it publicly available immediately. So there are considerations, but it isn't. It's an option.
Yeah. Lucia, what's the ethics of someone who's still busy with a PhD and they want to publish a section of it, but they're still going to complete their PhD. So if they put it in a journal, a section of their PhD, whether it's a literature review, whatever, does it compromise their thesis?
No, it wouldn't. So any reuse of the data, so you can make the data available. So, you know, for if there's a test to replicate, to see if you can replicate that, so the data is available for that. Any reuse of the data, you would have to give permission for that. So you can add that as a clause, or you can just make it available and to share, because usually somebody who's going to use your data is going to use it in another way. So they're going to combine it with something else, and it's going to be, you know, completely new. So there are different ways of putting your data out there.
But Turnitin can show up a paper that you published as a literature review paper that's now in your thesis. Turnitin will pick it up that you are plagiarizing yourself.
Oh, yes, if you do that, yes, it will. Yes. If you plagiarize yourself, it would pick it up.
So sometimes we advise students, don't publish this first until the PhD is done.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Is that a good idea? Is it good or bad?
Right. No, yes, it is. It is better to be careful about that. So first get your PhD out there. It depends a lot on the situation, right? So just make sure that if you are going to reuse that same data or the same tables and things, that you do refer to them, so that you do cite them. It's very important.
Yeah, time is running out. I see we have 20 minutes now.
Oh, okay. We've still got a lot to talk about. Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to leave you alone so that we can talk some more. If you do it a bit louder, a bit of energy, these colleagues, I see people have moved from Facebook, they're coming to Twitter because they say the sound is better. But also we are low energy, you know, people are sleeping. So
okay.
I feel like again.
Yeah. So it's important also to look at, what you publish, to make sure that you stay competitive in right on the front line. Make sure that you are aware of the trends in your subject area. Make sure that you know what the hot topics are. Very important. All databases these days give you the option to set up alerts. Make sure you know who the top authors are. Follow those authors. Make sure you know who the top journals are, follow those, and make sure that you link. I think you said it very nicely in the beginning. It's important to think of what are the current phenomena and how can I link my research to that. So we need to think about sustainable development goals. The impact of COVID-19 affects all subject areas, basically. Make your research strategic, and stay on top of what is important and what is hot. Make sure that it's interesting, that you always have something to write about.
It gets more people to read it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's very important. Also now getting to where to publish, of course, there's a whole number of considerations. So we've talked a little bit last week already. We've said it's important to think about, what is the readership? So who's the audience that I want to write for? So is it going to be practitioners, government, policy? Is it very academic, theoretical? So it's important to think about who's your audience, and to go to the aims and the scope of the journal, because that's where the most of that information is given to you. So It will be an indication there who's the audience. It will also give you an indication of what level. So how technical is your publication? Is it right for this specific journal? So looking at your aims and scope is very important. And you do that.
The audience is very important because it also shapes how you write. So if you think about it, I mean, I do research in mathematics education, and sometimes I'm writing for the research community in mathematics education. It's a different way of writing to if I decide I'm going to be writing for teachers. You know, it's a journal that's a journal for teachers. I write it differently because I want the language to be accessible, but I also want the work to be useful. Researchers, there are things that are interested in. And sometimes I might take the same work and rewrite it differently, but for the public, because I want to put it in the newspaper as an op-ed. Then it's a different way of writing. So always, if you think about an audience, and even when you think about a research community, it's different because journals, as you say, Lucia, sometimes you can have journals in mathematics education, for example, that are focusing on the psychology of mathematics education. Some are focusing on socio-political issues. Some are focusing on mathematics and society. So if you submit a paper that focuses on psychology of mathematics to a journal that focusing on mathematics education and society, they will reject it. Not because it's a bad paper, but because it's not relevant for that journal. So thinking about who you're writing for, so you can write about the same thing, but differently for different audiences, and the audiences are about the journals or you know, who the journal serves, and the theoretical sort of the framework of the journal. And it's always written. Check them online, read about the journal so that you can see what kind of work they publish.
There's also another reason that's important, because the being out of scope for a journal is the biggest reason for a rejection. So you can really save months of time if you make sure that you get that right.
That's very important. Actually, many people, when the journal rejects them and then they send to the other accepts them, they think that journal, there's something wrong with them. But actually, it might not be what they focus on. That's why they rejected you.
Exactly, and it's the most common reason, right?
The most common.
So usually you start off with analyzing your own references. So usually what you read is where you're going to publish as well. So you get your set of journals that you often read, that you cite. That is you get a short list of those. Those are important clues for you where you should publish. But then you can also do an analysis. Most of the databases, citation databases, help you to do that. They've got visualization tools built in to show you which are the top journals in a topic or in a subject field. So you can analyze that. And important to get that short list together. When you've got that short list, you need to look at who's publishing in that journal. Look at the geography of the authors that are publishing, because it's not sensible to publish in a journal that where you can see all the authors are coming from Romania, for example, and all the citations are also coming from Romania. That's it.
I'm told on Twitter that Minister Mbalula has joined our session.
Excellent.
So welcome. Has joined us on here. I thought they mean the Minister of Higher Education, but it's Minister Mbalula, Transport. I mean, okay. So welcome, Minister.
Welcome. Yes, indeed. Right. So yes, so that's important. So look at what is also look at the geography.
Yes.
Of the journal geography.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that question that always comes up is, it's important to also look at the prestige of the journal. And how do we measure prestige? We use journal metrics. So journal impact factor is one of the most well-known journal metrics. There's also site score. You can also use the H index, for example, as a way of looking at a journal. But all journal metrics use the number of citations divided by the number of documents published in that journal over a specific period. It's usually transparent. So you can information is provided over 2-year period, published this number of documents, and it was cited that many times. And that gives you an average number of citations per article. And that is what your impact factor then is.
And the people who are asking what's the importance of that, I mean, it's because you can see if you publish your paper in that journal, it stands a chance of getting more people reading it and citing it. And that's what you want. You don't just publish so that it's in your CV. You publish because you put your work out there for people to interact with it. Whether they like it or not is irrelevant. They must interact with it.
Yes.
If they ignore you, that's the problem. So the journals that they have a good metrics, it just gives you a sense. So it's not irrelevant to the person who asked earlier.
Exactly. So especially if you're going into academia, your productivity is important. So the number of publications, and they should all be in accredited journals or journals that have gone through a selection process, so that you know that they are of a certain standing, that they're at least peer reviewed. But then the impact of your work is important. So as you mentioned, if you're not cited at all, that's going to be a bad reflection on your work. And that could often be because you're not publishing in the right places. It's not necessarily that you're not, that your research is not good enough.
Exactly. But that's why they should avoid poor journals and predatory journals. Because if you publish there, you might say I've published somewhere, but nobody's going to cite it because nobody reads that stuff.
Yes, yes. So the journal impact factor, the journal metrics are important to give you an idea of the reputation of the journal, and so that you can understand what is the level of the journal and how our audiences interacting with that journal, because that also gives a higher opportunity for authors to also interact with your research. So it's important, it's very important, because journals are increasing over time. So if you look at research areas, you easily get 500-600 available journals publishing in that field. So you need to see what the range is, what is the quality range of the journal, so that you can make the right decision. But that's basically almost it's not the most important factor, but it is an important factor.
I don't want us to end the session before you talk about optimizing your profile. But I see some people come in late, some people missed last week's lecture, noting. Those ones who come late who are saying, what if they take too long? We've already talked about that. A decent journal will take 6 to 9 months to process your paper. So do not be upset. If they do it in 3 weeks and they just accept and they don't give you feedback, red lights, they may be very dodgy. So don't be excited. So 6 to 9 months is a reasonable time. That's why you need your publication strategy, because while you submit one paper, you're working on another, you submit. So you can make sure that you submit every 3 months or every 2 months. Then you won't have a time where you are just waiting for one paper. And if it's a rejection, then the whole house falls apart. You want to be getting, responses from different journals. Okay, that's why you need a strategy. Develop a strategy. We've been talking about that. Lucia? Optimizing your profile.
Optimizing your profile, very, very important as well. So there are various ways in which you can do that. So profiles, so for instance, in citation databases, like in Scopus, you automatically get one, and you also have a profile within Web of Science. So these are large citation databases, multidisciplinary. They're very authoritative because they are, all the journals that are indexed in them have gone through a selection process, and they are regarded as representative of global publication. They're used by the ranking organizations, they're used by the NRF. So your publication profile within those citation databases are very important. So go make sure they are automatically created. But it is important to also just check that all your publications are listed there, because it's going to affect not only your publication list, but also your H index. So if it misses a publication and it misses citation, immediately brings down your H index. So this is authoritative because it's used by government and so on. But then to increase your visibility of your research, engage with the platforms that are available out there. There is ResearchGate, there's academia.edu, there's Mendeley. Unfortunately, there are many of them, and I can't say that one, go only for that one, because also authors are engaging with the different profiles. So use them, it's very important. Upload, it also allows you to also interact with other researchers and to also share your publications. So those platforms are important. Use them to your own benefit. Make sure it enhances your own visibility. Also using social media. So social media has also become absolutely part of the whole scholarly communication, landscape. So using Twitter is very popular. So when you publish, make sure that people know about your publication.
You announce, you tell us.
So you announce it.
Read the paper.
Yeah. Even better is to blog. There was research was done about what is the effect of social media, and the best response that was found was from blogging, because there you can expand a little bit on your research and you can interact also with an audience about your research. So it's not only an announcement, it's more of a story as well. So blogging, yes. But other platforms as well, because you need to also keep in mind what is the age groups of the different social media platforms. So within Instagram and Twitter, Instagram is younger, for example, Facebook is older. So if you want to make sure that you reach all the different age groups within academia as well, make sure you use all of them and not only your one favorite one, because there are some differences. You want this older senior researchers to also notice you, so make sure of that. The one thing that I wanted to mention also is ORCID. I think most of our young researchers today know about ORCID because it's required when you submit your thesis to the NRF. But ORCID is just ORCID is like an ISBN for a book or an ISSN for a journal. It's a unique numerical number that identifies you as a researcher. So to make sure that it is easy for systems to link your publications to you as a researcher, just in case you have a name that can be confused with other researchers. But it's a much more secure way of building your profile, making sure that all your publications are aggregated under your name. So use ORCID. You can just go to their website, register, and you get your ORCID number, and that can also help you, make sure that all your publications are shown under your author profile. So those are the main ways in which you can make sure that your profile is really optimized. Use all of those avenues. It's very important.
Great. I think what we've done today, we've answered a lot of these questions that people sent last week that we were not able to answer because of time. We've got 3 minutes to go, and there are people who are asking questions about what do I do when my paper is rejected. I want to ask you from the other side. I can tell them what we do as experienced academics. What would be your advice when people get rejected papers?
It depends so much on what the rejection was. So if the rejection was just out of scope, that's easy, because then you need to find another journal that is more in scope. Most publishers these days also work, they have a system whereby they would recommend another journal that would be, yes, that would be more in line with your research. So yes, take the advice. I think it's so important to trust the process and to take the advice. That humility is going to pay off, I think, in the long run. Don't be, yes, don't just, fall flat when you get a rejection. It is so much, it is integrally part of being a scholar and of publishing. Nobody does not get rejected. It's part of the process.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Lucia. Thank you so much for being with us today and for your sharing your experience, your knowledge. If we get too many questions, we'll call you back.
Okay.
But we really appreciate the knowledge that you shared. I'm gonna make final remarks, but let me let you go. I see one question, I'll answer it. But thank you so much. Have a good afternoon. It's raining in Cape Town. Enjoy the rain.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So we just had Lucia, and I hope you benefited from the session. The key thing is for you to have a strategy for your publications, right? Don't just go into that blindly thinking that it will just come together. It doesn't just come together. You've got to work at it, right? I see there are questions. Someone, Basutu, on Twitter is asking, who has the final say in accepting or rejecting a paper? The editorial board or the editor? Here's the thing. The editorial board and the editor don't necessarily themselves reject or accept papers. They work with a team of reviewers, and reviewers will be from all over the world. So when your paper comes in, and I'm talking as someone who's been an editor of a journal, when your paper comes in, what the editor does, a good editor, will read the paper, and then given what the paper is about, the editor will then select relevant reviewers who are working in that area, and then they will send it to the reviewers. Some journals send to 3, some journals send to 4 reviewers, and then those reviewers, and some of those reviewers might be members of the editorial board, okay? The editorial board is not just there to review papers, but it might be some may be not on the editorial board, but they're experts in the field. And then the reviewers, they have guidelines as to what they should comment on, whether the paper should be accepted or not. It's not as if they read the paper and their answer they give is just yes or no. They read it, they will give you feedback as to whether it can be about the structure of the paper, it can be about whether there is consistency in terms of the question that you are exploring, the theoretical framework, the methodology, and the findings. They might give you comments about the clarity. They might give you comments about the style. They might give you comments also about whether that your paper is relevant for their journal. That's what Lucia was talking about. If they say it is not, if it's a question of scope, that this is outside our scope as a journal, and then they will reject it. If they reject your paper on the basis of scope, it's not a big problem. It doesn't mean you can't go anywhere. Then you go to another journal. As Lucia tells us, journals these days have started making suggestions as to where you can then take the paper if they reject it. If you get that, don't get upset. Send it there. If they give you feedback, sometimes you get irritated because you've got 2 full pages of feedback from each of the reviewers. Remember that the editor will send to you the feedback that they got from the reviewers, right? And it might be, if it's 4 reviewers, each one of them will have feedback they give you. And sometimes there might even be someone is mentioning something, the other one is not mentioning it. Don't disregard the things that are mentioned. A good editor, by the way, will have read the comments from all the reviewers, and then they will give their view and say, attend to this, and then say, resubmit after that. When you resubmit, you attend to the things that they said. When you resubmit, you respond to the editor, I attended to this by doing this, by doing that, so that the editor knows that you took them seriously. If you have the feedback and you cheekily reject it and say, oh no, they are racist, they are what, that's why they are not taking my paper, you are not helping yourself because they gave you feedback. So you've got to take that feedback and say, you said this, I have fixed that. All right? You ask questions about my theoretical framework. This is what makes it relevant. I have elaborated a little bit on this, da 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 da. And then, but you submit the paper and the explanation of what you've done. That is helpful. Of course, feedback can be hard sometimes, and people are scared to read feedback on your journal papers when you have submitted. My advice is that, don't try, if it's because it's your paper, you are married to your paper, you are convinced that this is the right paper. You submit, when you get feedback, read it once. If you are emotional, don't write to the editor. Don't. Some people get emotional after they read the feedback and they write to the editor very angry, they swear, they say all sorts of things. Don't do that. If it makes you angry, leave it there, cool down for 5 days, do something else, and then you come back to it, you read it soberly. As you have put it there, you'll be thinking about it. Be open-minded. You don't want to be stubborn with an attitude that when there's nothing you can rework, your stuff is always correct. That's not scholarly. Scholarliness is you read the feedback, you engage with it. If you are rejecting part of the feedback, be clear about why. Okay? Be clear about why. It's not about the history of the journal. It's not personal. Don't make it personal. Make it about the paper and respond to that. Some people of God have got a tendency of saying, if a journal said they send you feedback and they say rework and resubmit, you look at it and then you get angry at the journal and then you rework the paper and you submit to another low-level journal. That's not good for you. That's not good. You're not playing fair. You're not being ethical either, right? What you want to do is you want to rework and submit to that paper. Some of the top journals take time, all right? Lucia told you 6 to 9 months to get a response is decent. So don't get upset. It doesn't only happen to you, it happens to all of us. That's why when you're a researcher and you publish, you might not have written anything this year, your publications might still be coming next year because you submitted them this year or last year and they haven't come out, right? Because you submitted a reworked version and it still hasn't come out yet. Don't worry, keep writing other things. That's why you've got to have proper research. Your work can't just be in one paper. Write and keep sending to other journals. That one, not the same work. That work you are waiting, you send to other journals. So at any one time, you want to have at least 3 papers in a review process. Okay, at least 3 papers in a. If you are junior, you are just you should always be working on a paper. Always be working on a paper. Don't relax because you had one publication, you celebrate, you put your feet up. It doesn't work that way, right? Don't get worked up, don't get personal. This is publication, this is scholarly. Remember, when people disagree with you, they send you feedback that challenges you. It sharpens your ideas. So take it as an opportunity to sharpen your ideas. Read the criticism, sharpen your ideas. It's going to work for you, not only for this journal, but for many other papers and your work in general. So be open-minded and take that advice. Right. I've gone 8 minutes over time. I've got to stop. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been great. And thank you so much to Lucia. Lucia has been very, very useful. I saw all of you. Thank you so much for being here. I want to say goodbye to Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us on Twitter. We're stopping broadcast on Twitter. Instagram, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate the questions that you asked. So I'm going to pause the